Hello students, welcome to our online video tutorial class. So in this class today we will be starting with the next chapter, that is the animal tissue. You can remember that before this chapter we have already completed the chapter morphology of the flowering plant, and in that chapter exclusively we have discussed about various kind of morphological features present in the plants surrounding us. So according to our revised syllabus, after that morphology of flowering plant chapter, there is another chapter, commonly it was present, that is anatomy of flowering plant, but in the revised syllabus it is not there. So according to the revised syllabus we are starting the next chapter, that is the animal tissue. So in this specific chapter we need to discuss about the various kind of the animal tissues and their location and functions. First of all, we need to know what is tissue. Tissue is actually the accumulation of multiple cells which are similar in structure and function. Because when the multiple cells who are similar in structure and function, they can only perform the same kind of activity. And for performing same kind of the activity, only the equilibrium present in the human body or any of the organism's body, that will be maintained properly. Keep it in your mind, in our body, the tissues, whatever it is present or what are present, various kinds of tissues are present. And keep it in your mind, the organ always will be depending on the arrangement of tissues, structure and ability of the organ. Always the arrangement of the tissue which will be determining what the structure and ability of the organ. That means whatever will be the structure of the organ, whatever the function will be performed by the organ, everything will be getting controlled by the help of tissue. Now we are entering within the animal tissues. Specifically, animal tissue means the various kind of cells which are present within the animal body. Those are constituting the tissues, and these tissues are actually of 4 different types. You can see in the slide: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue and nervous tissue. Keep it in your mind, this epithelial tissue is exclusively the type of the tissue which is responsible for providing the barrier, responsible for providing the covering. This is also responsible for performing the secretion function, absorption. Okay, connective tissue is such kind of the tissue which is mainly responsible for keeping the connection in between various kinds of system, various kind of organs also. A third one is a muscular tissue which is exclusively made up of myofibrils, and this specific myofibrils are muscle fibers which are the unit, structural and functional unit of the muscular tissue. They are continuously contracting and relaxing, and by the contraction and relaxation they are responsible for maintaining the locomotion and movement. Nervous tissue is a type of the tissue which are exclusively made up of neurons, because the structural and functional unit is the neuron, and due to presence of the neuron only they can control and coordinate various kind of systems present in the human body as well as organism's body. Coming to the epithelial tissue, because this is the first type of the tissue what we need to discuss. First of all, the definition of epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue is actually the type of the tissue which is lining the outer surfaces of the organs, blood vessels throughout the body, as well as it is also present at the inner surface of the cavities present within the internal organs. Epithelial tissues are also known as vascular tissues because they are containing so much amount of extracellular matrix. So for that reason they are also called as vascular tissues. As well as you can say, on the surface of the epithelial tissue cells the blood vessels are also distributed, so for that reason also this can be considered as a vascular tissue. So mainly we can understand that epithelial tissue is present in our body for protecting, for covering, for secreting, for absorption purpose. First of all, epithelial tissues, we are categorized them into 2 different categories. One is covering epithelial tissue, another one is a glandular epithelial tissue. Covering epithelial tissue, obviously the function will be covering any of the internal organ or covering the entire body of the organism. So exclusively that is divided into 2 different categories. One is simple epithelial tissue, another one is compound epithelial tissues. Simple epithelial tissue, obviously this epithelial tissue will be very simple because it is only containing a single layer of cells, and obviously there should be 4 different types of the simple epithelial tissue. One is squamous epithelial tissues, cuboidal epithelial tissues, columnar epithelial tissues and ciliated columnar epithelial tissues. Ciliated columnar is not mentioned here, but in the next slides when we will be discussing about the various types of the simple epithelial tissues, then you can see there is one specific slide is given that is based on ciliated columnar epithelial tissues. Compound epithelial tissues are those specific type of the epithelial tissues which are having multiple layers of cells. So for that reason their name has been given compound epithelial tissues, and this specific tissue is exclusively made up of 2 different categories. One is transitional epithelial tissue, another one is a stratified epithelial tissue. A stratified epithelial tissue, from the name only we can understand the multiple strata or multiple layers of the cells are present actually here. So based on that also we have categorized the stratified epithelial tissue. As an example, stratified squamous, stratified cuboidal, stratified columnar, and the last one, that is a pseudo-stratified columnar. That is also not mentioned here because pseudo-stratified columnar can be placed within the simple epithelial tissue, as well as based on their structure also we can place them within the compound epithelial tissue. So we will be also discussing regarding that pseudo-stratified epithelial tissue in the next slides. Simple epithelial tissue. Simple epithelium has only one cell layer. Already we have discussed that. Every cell is present in the direct contact with the underlying basement membrane. This is a basic feature for any of the epithelial tissue cells. There should be presence of basement membrane below the epithelial cell. Without the basement membrane, epithelial tissue cannot form only. This type of the epithelium is found inside the body. Probably due to the fragile nature, they are present inside the body. Always keep it in your mind. They are forming the lining of the body cavities. They are covering the internal organs. They are present at the inner wall of the blood vessel, lymph vessel, inner wall of the heart, as well as present in the respiratory system. So these are the locations where the simple epithelial tissue, that means the epithelial tissue having single layer of cells, are present. Next, you can just see that we are entering within the simple squamous epithelium, first type under the simple epithelial tissue. So obviously this is the simple squamous epithelial tissue. Exclusively it is located in the inner lining of the air sac of the lungs, that means the inner wall of the alveoli it is present. It is forming the inner wall of the capillaries. It lines the inner wall of the blood and lymph vessels. It will cover the membranes that line the body cavities even. Okay. So description, obviously it is a single layer of cells and they are thin, flattened cells are present which are fit very tightly with each other. Function is exclusively helps in the diffusion process as well as filtration process, because carbon dioxide, oxygen, these respiratory gases are getting exchanged through this specific surface, that is a simple squamous epithelial tissue. So for that reason these are the specific functions are commonly done by this. And location already I have mentioned you, inner wall of the alveoli, inner layer of the capillaries, inside the blood vessel and lymph vessels, as well as it will cover the membranes that line our body cavity also. This is the figure of the simple squamous epithelium. From the figure you can understand the cells are dorsoventrally flattened and they are always take rest on the basement membrane because that is compulsory. Simple cuboidal epithelium. Obviously this kind of the epithelium, from here we can understand the cells are cubical shaped or cube shaped with large centrally located nuclei. Some of the types of cuboidal epithelial cells, they are having microvilli or microvilli which are present in the kidney tubules, and some of the cuboidal epithelial cells are having cilia which are present at the terminal bronchioles of the lung. So according to the presence of extensions on the surface of the cuboidal epithelium, they are present in different locations because based on the extension also their functions are getting varied. That's why functions, obviously they are responsible for secretion and absorption in the kidney. It is responsible for secreting in glands as well as from the choroid plexus, because in the choroid plexus region they are producing the CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. So cerebrospinal fluid is obviously gets secreted by that plexus. So obviously that is performed by the cuboidal epithelial cells. Mucous movement which are present in the terminal bronchioles. Obviously, so this mucous movement can be controlled by the cuboidal epithelial cells. These cuboidal epithelial cells are located in the kidney tubules. They are present within the glands and their ducts. They are present in the choroid plexus region of the brain, as well as they can be present on the surface of ovaries also. So these are the locations where the cuboidal epithelial cells or the simple cuboidal epithelial tissue can be present. But exclusively keep it in your mind, wherever they will be present, their function will be secretion and absorption. Their function also will be secretion of the gland from any of the choroid plexus, as well as the movement of the mucus out of the terminal bronchiole of the lung. This is the structure of the simple cuboidal epithelium. You can see these are the cuboidal epithelial cells and the nucleus are quite large and located centrally, and just below the cuboidal epithelial cells there is a presence of basement membrane also. Okay, so this is overall the structure of the simple cuboidal epithelium. Coming to the simple columnar epithelium. What is that? Simple columnar epithelium is a type of the epithelial tissue which is columnar in shape. Keep it in your mind, these cells are elongated than the cuboidal cells obviously, and the nucleus or the nuclei are present towards the base. Okay, and this specific type of the cells can contain or may contain the cilia on their surface. So simple columnar epithelium, obviously it is a single layer of cell, tall cells, already I have told, nuclei are oval shaped, and some of the cells are having cilia also. Location, obviously they are present inside the digestive tract, they are present in the gallbladder, bronchi, and inside the uterine tube. So these of the various kinds of ducts or located regions or locations are generally get covered by the simple columnar epithelial tissue. Function, exclusively absorption can be performed by the help of columnar epithelium, secretion also of mucus and various kind of enzymes. So these are the substances which are getting secreted, like mucus enzyme as well as absorption, both of the functions are performed. This is a simple columnar epithelium. You can see the cells are columnar shaped, and obviously single layer of cell is present, that's why simple columnar epithelial tissue or cells, and just below there is a presence of this basement membrane layer, which is compulsory for any of the epithelial tissue. Ciliated simple columnar epithelium, that means simple ciliated columnar epithelium. Obviously we can understand that this specific type of the cells are columnar shaped with cilia present on its upper surface, and location, these specific cells are found in the lining of the fallopian tube as well as in the some of the parts of the respiratory system, because these cilia are exclusively present for propulsing something. So for that reason, in the fallopian tube also, when they are present, they are propulsing the ovum which are getting produced during the time of ovulation, as well as when they are present inside the respiratory tract also, they are also responsible for propulsing the air, as well as they are responsible for inhibiting the unwanted particles which has entered within the respiratory tract. Function, obviously when the cilia are beating, obviously it will help to remove the particulate matter from any of the duct, from any of the tube. This is the structure of ciliated simple columnar epithelial tissue. You can see all of the cells are present in a columnar version, and in between these columnar shaped cells there are some specific type of the blue colored cells are also present. Those are not obviously the ciliated columnar epithelial cells, those are supportive cells for the remaining all columnar ciliated columnar epithelial cells. And you can see the nuclei are not present almost in the middle, they are present towards the base, and just below all of the cells there is a presence of thick basement membrane, which is a supporting membrane for any kind of the epithelial tissue. So this is the structure of the ciliated columnar epithelial tissue. Now we are coming to that compound epithelium. Obviously compound epithelium means this is a such kind of the epithelial tissue which is having multiple layers of cells. The cell layers are not present in single layer, there are multiple layers of cells are present, and they are having limited role in the secretion and absorption. Exclusively when multiple cell layers are also present in any of the epithelial tissue, they will be performing same function, that is secretion and absorption. Their main function is to provide the protection against chemical and mechanical stresses. Keep it in your mind, they are providing the protection against chemical and mechanical stresses. They cover the dry surface of the skin where they are present, that is mentioned. They cover the dry surface of the skin, the moist surface of the buccal cavity, pharynx, inner lining of the duct of salivary glands, and of pancreatic ducts. So exclusively they are covering the dry surface of the skin, they are present at the moist surface of the buccal cavity, pharynx, inner lining of the salivary duct, as well as in the pancreatic duct. So in these locations this compound epithelium is present exclusively for the secretion as well as for the absorption. We have already seen this compound epithelium is actually subdivided into two different categories. One is stratified epithelium, another one is transitional epithelium. That only it has been shown here. So let's see one by one whatever the type of epithelium is present. First one is the transitional epithelium. Why this transitional epithelium? Because this type of the epithelial tissue is exclusively made up of cuboidal shaped cells as well as columnar shaped cells. So when cuboidal and columnar both type of the cells are present in one tissue, that's why it is commonly known as transitional epithelium. Now the point is, transitional epithelium will be the basal cells will be cuboidal or columnar, and the superficial cells are dome shaped or squamous. That means cuboidal, columnar and squamous, all three kinds of the cells are present within this epithelial tissue, that is a transitional epithelial tissue. That's why the name also given transitional. Transitional means intermediate type of the epithelium, which is composed of all kinds of the shaped cells. Function, it can stretch, it can permit the distension of the urinary bladder. Exclusively this transitional epithelium is present only in the inner wall of the urinary bladder. Instead of this urinary bladder, nowhere this specific type of epithelial tissue present. So for that reason it is exclusively responsible for distending the urinary bladder. Location, they are lining the ureters, urinary bladder and part of the urethra. So part of the urethra, urinary bladder and the ureter, they will be get lined by this transitional epithelial tissue. So this is the figure of the transitional epithelial tissue where the columnar shaped cells and cuboidal shaped cells you can see. Coming to the stratified epithelium, that is the next or last type of the epithelial tissue under compound epithelial tissue, that means stratified epithelium. In this stratified epithelium, we can see there are two or more than two layer cells are present. Basal layer, that is always rest on the basement membrane. Surface layer, they will be always facing towards the cavities named by the appearance of the surface cells. Obviously, due to presence of the surface cells, based on their name only, various kind of compound epithelial cells have been categorized. That means suppose squamous epithelium, compound epithelia, okay, stratified squamous, that means obviously the superficial cells will be squamous type. Columnar stratified, that means the superficial cells are columnar. So cuboidal stratified, that means the superficial cells are cuboidal shaped, that means based on the cellular shape present in the on the surface, this specific stratified epithelial tissue has been categorized. So let's see one by one. First one, stratified squamous epithelial tissue, that means obviously this specific type of the tissues will be squamous cell containing. Obviously multiple layer cells are present, and specifically the superficial layer will be containing the squamous cells. Located in the surface of the skin, our skin is exclusively the example of stratified squamous epithelial tissue, please keep it in your mind. Lining of the mouth, that means inner lining, throat, esophagus, rectal region, anus and vagina. That is internal so many regions as well as external region, that is the skin layer, exclusively they are representing the stratified squamous epithelial tissue. Function, exclusively they are present for protection, they are against the abrasion, they are always preventing the pathogens and any kind of the chemical atom. So for this specific activities only, for protection activities only, these stratified squamous epithelial tissues are present on our outer body surface as well as in our inner body in various locations. Coming to the stratified squamous epithelial tissue structure, this is the structure. You can see multiple various kinds of cells are actually present, and all of the cells are taking rest on the basement membrane, and the cells which are present on the upper surface, those are exclusively squamous shaped. Okay, going for the next, that is stratified cuboidal epithelium. Exclusively this specific type of epithelium is made up of cuboidal shaped cells, and the superficial cells are obviously cuboidal shaped. They are present in the sweat glands, ducts as well as in the ovarian follicular cells, because those locations are actually get controlled by this cuboidal epithelium, and they are stratified also. Responsible when they are getting stratified or when they are actually cuboidal or columnar shaped, they are exclusively responsible for secreting something, for absorbing something, as well as with that they are also providing some protection. In case of simple epithelial tissue also you have seen columnar squamous tissue is exclusively for the covering, okay, and the columnar and cuboidal, these two type of the simple epithelial tissue is exclusively for showing secretion, for absorption. So maybe that specific type of cuboidal or columnar tissue is present in compound epithelium, but they are performing the same function, that is secretion, absorption at first, then at last protection. Stratified cuboidal epithelium, you can see the figure, these are the cuboidal shaped cells which are present in multiple layers, and obviously the lower layer is taking rest on the basement membrane, and this is overall surface cells are obviously cuboidal shaped, and they are lying in the sweat gland ducts, male urethra in these specific locations. Stratified columnar epithelial tissue. What is stratified columnar epithelial tissue? Stratified columnar epithelial tissue is a such kind of the tissue which is specifically multiple layers of cells are present, and obviously the cells are columnar shaped. Location obviously largest excretory duct of the gland, male urethra, they are present. They are can be shown in the conjunctiva of eye. They are present within the parts of pharynx. They are present in the epiglottis region also. And there are some specific type of columnar epithelial cells are present which are ciliated. I have told the first one, that is the largest, the columnar epithelial tissue which is present in the largest excretory duct of the gland, male urethra, conjunctiva, those are non-ciliated type. Now we are just talking about the ciliated type. They are present in the nasal surface of the soft palate, they are present in the larynx region, they are present in the fetal esophagus region. So these are the locations where the ciliated type of columnar epithelial tissue and obviously the stratified columnar epithelial tissue is present. And the previous one is the stratified columnar epithelial tissue but which are non-ciliated. Function, they are responsible for conduction and barrier. Okay. Now we are just going for stratified columnar epithelium. This specific type of epithelial tissue are columnar shaped and they are present in multiple layers. That's why it is known as stratified columnar epithelium. Now the thing is that after this specifically pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium we are coming. We have placed this one within the compound epithelial tissue, but exclusively these are made up of single layer of cells. So for that reason you can also place it within the simple epithelial tissue. It consists of columnar shaped cells which are crowded very closely they are present together. So for that reason sometimes it is found their shape is getting distracted due to huge tight attachment in between the cells. In cross sections, if you will see the nuclei which are appear to be on the 2 or more levels, and because of the crowding the cells appear distorted and they all do not reach the surface. So obviously in this structure you can see, if you see this structure very carefully, you can see some of the cells are present or they have gone up to the surface, some of the cells they haven't. Why? Because due to the huge pressure or due to the huge attachment, a very tight attachment in between the cells, thus few of the cells they have reached up to the surface portion, a few of the cells they can't reach up to the surface. So we can think like that there are 2 layers of the cells are present, but actually there are not 2 layers of cells. All of the cells are actually getting produced from the upper surface of the basement membrane and they are getting finished on the upper surface of this tissue. So mainly 1 layer of cells are present, but few can reach up to surface, few can't. So for that reason it is considered as that there are 2 layers of cells are present. But in fact every cells they are resting on the basement membrane, that is common. So the epithelium is technically simple in spite of appearances, because based on the appearance if you will see, this is obviously a like of compound, but according to their arrangement all of the cells are taking rest on the basement membrane. So for that reason it is obviously a simple type of epithelial tissue that I have told you. Now entering within the glandular epithelial tissue, obviously this kind of the epithelial tissue is commonly present within the gland, and they are made up of a single cell or they can be made up of a mass of epithelial cells, and they are exclusively responsible for secretion purpose, because when they are present within the gland obviously they will be providing the secretion. Classification of this specific glandular epithelial tissue or the entire gland we have done based on the destination, that means which kind of secretions are happening, okay, or in which specific location those secretion will be going. Based on that the glandular epithelial tissues will vary. Based on their structure, glandular epithelium or gland can vary. By nature of the secretion, which kind of secretion is happening, based on that also glandular epithelium is of various types. By the method of discharge, that means in which method it is discharging, is it in exocrine method or endocrine method. So based on that method also glands or glandular epithelial tissue is of multiple types. There are mainly 2 types of the glandular epithelial tissue depending on how the cells release the substances they produce. So exclusively we have categorized that, and we have made 2 types of the glands. One is exocrine gland and one is endocrine gland. So this exocrine and endocrine gland we have created because of, or we have seen because of their, based on their secretion, because their secretion substances or the nature of those substances which are getting secreted, those are separate from each other or different from each other, okay, and they are also not releasing in same location, their functions are not also same. So based on that we have categorized the glands. So endocrine epithelium and exocrine epithelium, already I have told this epithelial tissue is present in endocrine as well as exocrine tissue. So for that reason these are the endocrine epithelium these are the ductless gland, have no ducts, and their secretion, that means hormones, is carried directly to their site of action by the bloodstream, not by the duct. Keep it in mind, the epithelial tissue which is present within the endocrine glands, they are exclusively or they are commonly, you can say, they are releasing hormones, and those hormones will be getting carried by the blood vessels. They are not carried by any of the duct, because the duct is not getting produced by any of the endocrine gland. So pituitary gland and adrenal gland will be the example, and exocrine epithelium is that such kind of the epithelial tissue which is commonly released by the exocrine glands, because in this kind of glands exclusively the secretions are enzymes, not hormones, and they are having the duct. So through the duct the secretions are coming out and just going to its target organ. But obviously the secretions are not like hormones, they are not functioning and they are not getting distributed in the body also like hormones. This is the main thing. Now we have come to the cell adhesion molecules. In this specific slide we will be discussing about the cell adhesion molecules. Specifically the epithelial cells which are present in the epithelial tissue, they are connected with each other or they are attached with each other by some specific adhesion molecules. Adhesion molecules means these molecules are responsible for keeping all of the epithelial cells together. So whatever the types of the epithelial tissue cell adhesion molecules, first one is the tight junction. You can see in the figure, tight junction is such kind of the junctional molecule or the protein molecule which is responsible for attaching both of the cell membrane which are present side by side in a tight manner. So when the cellular membranes are attached with each other in a very tight manner, automatically you can say the cells are present in the cellular stability. The presence of the cells, are their stability is getting increased. As well as one more thing I need to share here, that is no other molecules are specifically any kind of water also, it can't move through the space which are present in between the cells. So obviously this is the main function of the Tight junction. Adherence junction. Adherence junction is such kind of the junction which you can consider as a type of desmosome also. Adherence junction is such kind of the junction where there are some specific protein molecules are present on the inner surface of the cellular membrane, and the cellular membranes are also getting connected with each other by some specific proteins, membrane proteins. So automatically when the both of the cellular membranes are getting attached with each other or getting associated with each other, automatically this junctional complex name has been given adherence junction. Okay, and obviously one more thing here we need to keep it in our mind that in case of adherence junction, the actin bundles are present inside which are remain attached with those red colored globular protein, whatever you can see in the diagram. Okay, desmosome is actually the joins the intermediate filaments in one cell to those in a neighbor. Obviously you can see here there are two red colored proteins are present on the inner surface of the cell membrane, and one more thing, these are the blue colors intermediate filaments are there which are connected with this specific button like red colored proteins, and these proteins are also again connected by some specific membrane proteins. So for that reason this specific entire structure of the desmosome is keeping both of the cell membrane together and making the structure stable. Gap junction, already like the tight junction, this kind of junction also will be there. Please keep it in your mind, in case of tight junction both of the cells are attached so much tightly, so no such kind of the molecule can pass through the space. But in case of gap junction, always keep it in your mind, in between the cells there is a gap is present, and that through that gap molecules, water, those kind of substances can pass. So for that reason this specific junctional complex name has been given gap junction. And obviously in case of gap junction also the cells are connected by a protein that is commonly known as connexin. Okay, hemidesmosome. Hemidesmosome is exclusively another type of the cell junctional molecule, a cell adhesion molecule, which will help the cell to anchor on the surface of the basement membrane or basal lamina, because you can see here these are the yellow colored globular shaped protein or button like proteins which are connected with the inner portions of the cell through the intermediate filaments. But these button like yellow colored proteins are also attached with the yellow colored basal lamina or basement membrane by some specific stalk like proteins. So this is exclusively the hemidesmosome. So desmosome is responsible for attaching both of the cells which are present sidewise, and hemidesmosome hemidesmosome is exclusively present because by this the cells can adhere with the basement membrane, and it remain attached with the basement membrane automatically from both sides, from the lower, from every side epithelial tissue structure is getting so much stable, okay, due to presence of these cell adhesion molecules or cellular junctional molecules. So with this specific slide we have already completed that epithelial tissue portion. I think that each and every portion whatever I have discussed in this specific video you have understood very clearly, and I think you have enjoyed this video a lot. So thank you for seeing my video. Thanks a lot.